A couple other ways to do ROMs is to do, there's two other types of ROM arrays that you can get. One is programmable ROMs, or PROMs, and another is electrically programmable ROMs, which are EPROMs. Now, programmable ROMs are effectively, you build an array and you have transistors at every site of the array, and then you wind up burning out fuses. So after the fact, once you create the IC chip and have it out in the field, you decide how you want to program it, and you can burn out fuses and effectively disable the unwanted transistors. Now, once you've burned them once with programmable ROMs, you have your value, you can't change it, or at least you can't unburn a transistor. If it turns out that you want to change your logic in a way where you burn out some additional transistors, of course you could do that, but you can't. If you burned a transistor that you didn't want to, or you want to change it later, you obviously can't do that. So it's kind of programmable once for the most part, and if you don't like the programming, you'd need a new part in order to program it differently. But the other way of doing it is electrically programmable ROMs. And this, we kind of covered this a little bit in the process lecture, where I kind of showed how to use programmable gate. And so effectively, you use a gate type structure where you have your thin gate oxide, and then you have a polysilicon layer on top of that and a floating gate before you add your final gate at the top. And what you can do is effectively, if you put the right amount of voltage on your gate, between your gate and bulk, you can cause electrons to get embedded in the floating gate. And so that polysilicon floating gate can get embedded electrons that effectively change the threshold, in effect the threshold voltage, or whether you can turn the device on and off with your normal gate voltage. So depending on how you have the floating gate programmed, you can put your normal gate voltage on the device, on the transistor, and it effectively won't turn the transistor on. If you put a different amount of charge on the polysilicon floating gate, when you raise the gate voltage, it will turn the transistor on. So in effect, you can charge and discharge that polysilicon floating gate in order to effectively make the transistor device turn on or not turn on when you apply your normal voltage to it. And of course, like I said, this is electrically programmable, and so you can wind up changing the programming over time. It does take special settings in order to do the programming. You can't just usually do the programming while you're operating the device, but if you want to change the programming, you can go into a different setting mode, change the programming, and then start using it again with new programming. So this foil goes into a little bit more detail of what I was talking about on the last foil, on how you can program your flash programming of your PROM transistors. And like I said, the charge that's on the floating gate determines the threshold voltage of that gate. And if you want a logic value of 1, in effect you can put a negative VT in effect on the transistor, and a logic value of 0, you put a positive VT that's more positive than your normal operating voltage. And so the transistor effectively won't turn on. And what you can do is you can either erase the cell or you can program it to 0. So erasing it will make it effectively on and allow it to conduct current. So it'll set the value of the cell to effectively give you a 1 out, and you do that by applying a high body voltage. So in effect, you increase the bulk or body voltage of all your transistors to 20 volts, and for any transistors you want to erase, you put the gate voltage at 0 volts and it'll erase them. Any transistors you don't want to erase, you make sure that the gate voltage is at 20 volts as well. So that's the lower left two examples. If you want to program a 0 to a transistor, you put the bulk voltage of all of your transistors at 0 volts, and you put the gate voltage at 20 volts. And you also make sure the source and drain are at 0 volts. If you don't want to program when your bulk is at 0 and your gate is at 20, you can put the source and drain at 8 volts. And I'm not sure exactly what inhibit program means, so I'm not going to speak to that. But that's how you wind up programming to either 0 or 1. So one example of an EEPROM memory array is NAND flash memory. So this is very high density and low cost per bit. It's actually pretty complex on the way that you program it and everything. So the description in the book does a much better job. It would take me quite a while to try and get that concept through in the lecture. So I recommend that you go read the details in the book. The main thing that I'll mention here is that NAND flash is programmed one page at a time, but so you have a block that's made up of many pages, and the first thing you do is you erase the block all at one time, and then you program the pages one at a time after you've erased the block. One example is that they mention here is if you had 4096 bit pages, 16 pages in an 8 kilobyte block, and then of course you have many blocks in a given memory. So again, go into the book to read through the details of actually programming and using NAND flash memory. So one thing that's commonly done is we can use a ROM in order to help build a logic function out of it. For example, you can use a ROM as a lookup table that contains a truth table. So if you have n inputs that you're sending, that you have available, and you want to get k outputs, we can send those n inputs, if you look in the lower left hand side, n inputs into a decoder in order to decode into 2 to the n word lines or 2 to the n words. And then of course if we want k outputs, we need k bits, and so we have a ROM array that's 2 to the n rows and k columns in it. And so this can, again, if we have a truth table inside the ROM and we want to change the function of the truth table, it's pretty easy. We just reprogram the ROM. So whether we do that through a programmable ROM or whether we do that through, we need to make sure to program the ROM before we produce the IC chip. We can reprogram it one way or the other. And then we can use this ROM to create a finite state machine. And if we have a finite state machine where we have n inputs, k outputs, but then we also need s bits of state bits, and so we'll need a state going into the ROM and a state coming out of the ROM. So if we want to build that type of structure, we would need to build, the number of word lines would be 2 to the n plus s, because the number of state bits needs to be added at the input. And the number of bits coming out need to be k plus s, because we need the k outputs and we need the s state bits coming out as well. And that would require also, once we come out of the ROM, we need a register to capture the values and then either send them on, the k bits get sent on to some additional logic. The state bits need to wrap back around going into the ROM to tell what state you're now in currently. So the register following the ROM would need to be k plus s number of bits in order to store the values coming out of the ROM. Another type of memory array is a programmable logic array. And this can perform basically any function, but in a sum of products form. So what this means is we have we supply inputs or literals that we supply the inputs and their complements. So as shown in the schematic down in the lower right, we have our inputs A, B, and C, and we provide A, B, C, and A naught, B naught, and C naught as our input. Then we produce a function of ands of all of our inputs, and then ultimately we get outputs that we take the output of the ands and we do ORs of all the ands, and so we can produce all the different values of that we might need of all the inputs ANDed together to produce a certain logic, and then the result of those logics ORed together in order to get a resultant out. So for example, with the logic shown there with A, B, and C as inputs, if we wanted a full adder type logic coming out, we could get the sum and carry as just a product of all of the inputs and an OR function in the right combinations to get the sum and carry coming out from 3 inputs. So this shows how you could generate the logic that does that using an AND plane followed by an OR plane. So in the previous slide, we showed how you could get a logical function out of an AND plane followed by an OR plane, but keep in mind AND logic and OR followed by OR logic is not very efficient in CMOS. And so rather than doing an AND plane and an OR plane, we can effectively do not AND followed by an OR plane, and then if we kind of strip out the extra inverters, we wind up with a NOR followed by NOR, as long as we do the right inversion logic at the very beginning. So we can effectively get a NOR type of PLA out, and that's much more efficient. And again, also we can use dynamic logic or pseudo NMOS. Again, my preference, dynamic logic. Don't really like pseudo NMOS. And doing dynamic logic, we can get much more efficient using dynamic NOR type functions than using static AND OR function. So in effect, like I said, we're going to use De Morgan's law to convert everything to NOR plane. So our AND plane is effectively a NOR plane followed by another NOR plane. So and then in effect you're using something similar to the structure, or you could use something similar to the structure of the ROM that we showed earlier, where these AND and OR planes can be using like a single transistor that's programmed, and thus the programmable logic array. And I'll get into that a little bit more in the next slide, but you can see you can use a similar notation that we used for the ROMs, where we have the rows and columns crossing each other, and where we want to have a transistor we put a dot to represent that there's a transistor in that crossing. So here we can see an example from the last slide, but showing the actual transistors and schematic for transistors and layout. In this particular case, it's showing pseudo NMOS, and with pseudo NMOS, you don't actually need to have, if you remember, if we were using domino, you can't have a domino stage directly driving another domino stage. You'd have to have an inverting stage in between. So you really wouldn't be able to use a domino stage followed by another domino stage. But in this case, since they're using pseudo NMOS, that weak PMOS is not just a keeper, it actually pulls the value up actively if nothing's pulling down. So if we have logic going through this, we can have pseudo NMOS followed by pseudo NMOS. So that's one advantage to pseudo NMOS over domino, for example. And so again, wherever there's a transistor, it's going to, in the first AND plane, it's going to pull the logic low, which will then cause, if that horizontal word line coming out of the AND plane is attached to a transistor, since it's low, that transistor is not going to be discharging because its gate is going to be low. And so the vertical line coming out of the OR plane will not be pulled low and will instead be high. And so in effect you get two inversions out of the AND and OR plane, and then you have one inverter at the very end doing the sum and carry. And so as long as you do inverted logic going in at the very beginning from A, B, and C, you'll wind up having 4 inversions through and having true logic coming out at the end. So the AND and OR plane each kind of invert, and then the final inverter at the end. And so you have to make sure to have complementary logic going in at the very beginning. And then, of course, there's some layout shown here, how you could lay this out in reality. And again, because the AND and OR plane are single transistors each, similar to the ROM type style of array, it's very compact logic, very small area that it's going to take up. So this can give you a pretty good power of logic in a very small area. So that's a nice thing about PLAs and ROMs. So just one final note here, comparing a little bit PLAs versus ROMs. For a PLA, the OR plane of the PLA is very much like the ROM array, and the AND plane of the PLA is kind of like the ROM decoder. But in general, PLAs are a little bit more flexible than ROMs. You don't need to have 2 to the n rows for n inputs, and you only need to generate the minterms that you actually need, whereas with a ROM decoder you might wind up generating everything. And so you can take some advantage of logic simplification depending on the function that you're trying to compute. So in effect, PLAs and ROMs are similar to each other, but there are some key differences.